Hello, and welcome to the Consulate of Mexico in Boston series of conversations with Mexicans in New England. And the topic today, this afternoon, is how music has been impacted in Mexico and New England by COVID-19. We have two very good friends and important musicians as our guests today. Saúl Bitrán, who is Associate Professor of Violin at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, and Benjamin Juárez, who is the Director of the Center for Mexican Studies of UNAM in Boston. I will briefly introduce both of them and then we will begin our conversation. Saúl Bitrán is the first violinist of the award-winning Cuarteto Latinoamericano and is an associate professor of violin at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley. He's also concertmaster at Unitas Ensemble, a Boston-based orchestra committed to introduce Latin American repertoire to US audiences. A devoted teacher and chamber music coach, his former students now populate many of the finest orchestras in the world. In the year 2000, he was granted the Bellas Artes Medal by the government of Mexico and the Chilean Order of Merit Pablo Neruda in 2014. Benjamin Juárez Echenique studied music, musicology, opera, and orchestral conducting in Mexico, California, and in Europe. He has worked as staff conductor for the Symphonic Orchestra of the State of Mexico and Mexico City's Philharmonic, as a guest conductor for orchestras in Europe, the US, and China. He promotes Mexican and Hispanic music, and his work on Mexican cathedral music earned him a Latin Grammy nomination. He's the former dean of the College of Fine Arts at BU, Boston University, where he is currently a professor, and he is also the director of the Center for Mexican Studies of Mexico's National Autonomous University in Boston. Welcome, Benjamin and Saúl. Thank you so much for giving us the time to share your experiences with us. I know that you both have been Zooming a lot, so I apologize for one more hour of Zooming, but at the same time, it's fantastic to be able to hear more about your experience in these times, but also on your careers. You both have consolidated careers, contributing to the musical landscape of Mexico and the US, impacting younger generations in different countries. How has this road been for each one of you? And what would you say have been your biggest challenges and your best rewards through your career? Benjamin, do you want to begin?
Yes, thank you so much, Alberto, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be sharing this conversation with you and with my dear friend Saúl Bitrán. So I first came to the US in the early 70s to study in California, and I can see many changes regarding the interest on Mexican and Latin American culture. At the time, I remember that the then music administrator of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, when a friend of mine suggested that I go conduct there, responded that Mexicans had no interest in symphonic music. There was no symphonic Mexican music of quality. And anyway, the Mexican community in Los Angeles could not afford to buy tickets to come to the LA Phil. I mean, things have changed, and now the LA has a Venezuelan conductor. So we live in a different world. But it has been always a struggle of wonderful people, wonderful colleagues, mentors, and students who are very interested in the music of Mexico and Latin America, and also some unenlightened colleagues who, because of their ignorance, they think that Latin America and Mexico has not produced any music of significance. And that's why many illustrious colleagues, even from a generation before, like Dr. Stevenson at the University of California in Los Angeles, was forbidden to teach the music of Mexico and Latin America by his dean, and it was not until he was invited to move to Indiana University that he was allowed to teach every other year a class on Mexican and Latin American music. So it's an ongoing uh, conversation, but we can see that the Mexican and Latin American community is the fastest growing minority in the US. And of course, they are very eager to find more about our culture, our music, our art. And I'm certain that there's a large cohort of audience members waiting to to know more about the music of their heritage. And there are many wonderful hidden treasures there from the 16th to the 21st century.
Thank you, Benjamin. What about you, Saul? What do you think?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with my friend Benjamin. The landscape has definitely changed. I have been, as him, I have been witness of this process since we started with our career in the quartet, which is truly a binational career because we have been playing most of our concerts between the U.S. and Mexico during over 35 years, and we have been really witness of this transformation on the perception of concert music in Latin American continent as something that is totally original, particular nowadays, as almost as appreciated as the visual art, which we all know got very famous thanks to people like Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. But now we have seen a bit of focus of that kind also in concert music, thanks to Gustavo Dudamel and so many other luminaries that have populated the classical Latin American world. And despite all these still prevalent prejudices that Benjamin mentioned, and ignorance and sometimes preconceived ideas, and it may sound as a cliche, but concert music is really an art form that knows no boundaries, and we are witness to this when we play a concert in Culiacan, and then we play a concert in Riverside, California. I mean, the love for the music is the same. When the music is good, the reactions of the audience may be culturally informed in a different way, but that doesn't mean anything. The enthusiasm, the way that music communicates to the audience is absolutely the same in the US, in Mexico, and anywhere else in the world for that matter.
Thank you, Saul. How can you share with us how was your first found love, or how did you find love in music? Saul, maybe probably you with your family, but Benjamin, can you tell us how did you decide to make a profession of, of music? Were you encouraged to do so? Was it challenging?
Well, I think it's always challenging to take a path of a musician, but sometimes it's something that we really cannot help. It's a calling so strong that we don't have any other choice. And the of course, the support of my family helped a lot. The incredible luck that I have had throughout my career to meet wonderful colleagues like Saul, wonderful teachers, wonderful students have really paved the way. But I feel that that luck also played a great role, way beyond my talent and way beyond my possibilities. I feel that I'm very lucky, and also very lucky to have Marisa Canales as my wife, who has really helped to make the experience just unbelievable.
You didn't say that she's a flutist, a very important Mexican flutist, Marisa Canales, your wife, and also a producer of concert music. What about
Yes, with
Saul? Was your love for music something that was in your veins, or did your parents have much to do with it?
They had a lot to do with it, if not everything to do with it. When I grew up, my path was already paved. It was just something that was completely natural for me to follow because my two older brothers, who are my colleagues in the Cuarteto Latinoamericano, and both my parents were musicians. My father is still a violist. And so I definitely grew up in a musical family. And when I was of age 6, a violin was deposited into my hands and I was given the order to play. So those are my memories. And it was always a pleasure that I don't even remember having had any choice in the matter.
But it's
If I
that,
may, if I may intervene there, I remember once going to a concert of the National Conservatory of Mexico, and the concert master was Saúl. He was so little that his seat didn't reach the floor, and yet he was, of course, the best violinist in the whole orchestra, and he just played the role of the concert master with the same flair that we know he has even today.
Thank you.
and I think that's fantastic. I've seen you both, Benjamin conduct and Saul play with your brothers, and it is fantastic to see how much you enjoy it every time. I'm sure you suffer it too, but it's part of the way life goes. Now, we know, we have seen how the pandemic has changed our daily lives in many ways. We have had conversations with other academics and musicians about the challenges of doing their work remotely, but particularly teaching music. Saul, how would you describe the challenges of transmitting how a note must sound, or how to hold the bow when you cannot physically demonstrate it? And how have you been able to overcome it?
It's been a real challenge, an unexpected one that landed upon all of us in mid-March, middle of the semester, and we were just told, okay, from now on you teach remotely. And you know, music teaching is not lecturing, which can more or less be replaced by this medium, although still it's not the same. Instrument teaching, especially an instrument as subtle as the violin, is all about small effects, sound nuances, different weights of your arms, of your hand, tactile feelings that I exercise with my students, acute listening, things that are impossible to transmit through any electronic media. It's been a challenge, and it has taught me a lot as well. For example, I am now much better equipped to transmit my ideas verbally than I was before. Because when I found myself getting stuck with a student or not being able to convey what I wanted, I just took my violin and played for them. Or I put my hand in their shoulder and they got this feeling of weight, whatever. Now I just talk. I have translated all these concepts into words and phrases, and I'm trying still refine them as we go. And I think this is going to have a benefit because my own ideas now are clearer thanks to this obstacle that we have. I have been able to focus much more in what I say, in what I teach, what I do. What does a good violin sound constitute of other than a pleasant sound? Now I have realized that there are a lot of elements of weight, of technical, physical disposition, things that have forced me to become more analytical. I don't wish this on anyone, and I really hope this ends soon and I can go back to my students in person. But by then, I'm sure I will have gained some insight on how to communicate verbally, which sometimes has more power than just sheer imitation.
Thank you. Well, that's a very good example of how a difficult time brings a challenge and takes you to another interesting place. Benjamin, you were in Mexico for the beginning of the pandemic and were involved in an emergency fund called Juntos por la Música, precisely with Marisa, your wife, to get resources for Latin American musicians that have been affected by the cancellations of concerts and public events. Why is it important to support the performing arts in the middle of a health crisis?
Yes, this, yes, this was a wonderful campaign that really Marisa started along with Gabriela Ortiz, who's a wonderful composer, very close both to the Cuarteto and to us, and her husband, Alejandro Square. And it was a very successful campaign because we went beyond our goal, and this was focused on Mexican musicians because it's impossible to help everybody. At the end, there was a raffle to select all the candidates that filled all the possibility. But it's very interesting that it came from a non-for-profit organization and a recording company, when perhaps the government was very busy looking at other emergencies. The society, like in other times of Mexican history, rose up to the challenge, and all the musicians who benefited from the campaign have been incredibly helpful, because it's also a psychological uh, benefit to know that people appreciate your work, that your work is being valued, and that besides the financial support that they receive, on top of that, that they get 1 year of very important support through Google to promote their work as musicians. So this also has to do a little bit going along on what Saul was saying. Most of us, more people listen to music than at any other time in history. Even during the pandemic, I think that without music, humankind would have succumbed. It was music that helped us to survive all these weeks, endless months of being locked up. And more people experience music through electronic medium. So we need also to use technology in order to teach, to communicate, to learn. And of course, it's not ideal, but this state of emergency broke many molds in the way we think and in the way that we teach. Of course, violin is very difficult to teach online, but what about singing? When you sing, there's a high risk of contagion, and perhaps as we move into the new normal, it will be piano and string that can um, move into this smooth technological platform, or face-to-face teaching, whereas singing will require many, and woodwind instruction will require many more precautions. But going back to the campaign, we're all very proud of it, and many musicians are asking Marisa and all of us to do another round, although it's really challenging. And I'm sure that there will be other agents within and outside of the Mexican government that will help the musical community. We really need it. It's urgent.
Thank you, Benjamin. In another, you started talking about what I was going to ask you, and I'm going to ask. The World Economic Forum has estimated that the loss of live performance revenues during the past 6 months has been $10 billion in sponsorships alone. In this scenario, in which for the foreseeable future, as you were mentioning, Benjamin, it will be very complicated to hold a concert as we used to, with a group of performers or some kind of performers and audience. How do you envision the possibilities of making a sustainable musical environment for the people who make living through music? Would you think, you both, that this could be leveled by charging for remote concerts, or having new boom of pre-recorded concerts and presentations? And Saúl, in particular, how do you foresee the future of the Cuarteto Latinoamericano?
I am not optimistic. I don't believe we can keep music on life support. I am just going to wait for the vaccine because I don't believe in reduced capacity concert, distanced orchestras. Orchestra music is a community activity which is meant to be enjoyed by people sitting next to each other, playing or listening. It's much more than sitting in your home and listening to recorded music. And the socially distanced concert is only a band-aid because music societies, as they are barely making money filling the halls, if at all. So I don't see any economic future for concerts with 30 people. It may be cute, it may be a temporary reprieve, an opportunity to listen to music live in the midst of a pandemic, but I hope this is not going to be normalized. I hope people will, when we are all vaccinated, people will flock back and enjoy music the way it's supposed to be, elbow to elbow with your neighbor, because this is just believe me, forgive me for being so blunt, but this has no future the way it is. We are on life support, and we are doing what we can to keep ourselves busy and to keep ourselves in shape. But the truth is that our métier, our job, is not made for these conditions.
Thank you, Saúl. And I do agree with you. Music is to be shared, and there's nothing like live music. And probably it's one of the things I have missed the most in these 4 months, not being able to go weekly as I usually do to a live concert. Benjamin, tell us.
Yes, I would say that. Sorry, I would say that the 10 billion figure really refers to pop music industry, where of course a concert in huge venues and with sponsorship from artists like Beyoncé or J-Lo, well, make tons of money for all the people involved. In the classical music, we are in a different world, but it's the same. I mean, or I would say even worse, because in countries like Mexico, where the state sponsor orchestras, musicians have kept their salaries, but in countries like the US, even the musicians of the Metropolitan Opera or large important orchestras have not received their salaries for quite a bit of time, and this is just not sustainable. But we want to feel together, and as much as we experience music through electronic media and we enjoy it a lot and we have access to wonderful performances, it's not the same as being together in a room, feeling and living that sense of risk. But I think that it will be the opera that will be more challenged until we get the vaccination. But chamber music, a group like the Cuarteto Latinoamericano, is in a much better place to play together. Besides, I mean, there are 3 brothers playing together, so that can help, I'm sure, the sense of security, of being close together and making music for us. But I think that we need to wait until the vaccination is ready to really dream of a new normal.
And Benjamin, tell us a little bit now in this time, this need to remain remote. What is your perspective of how teaching will evolve, both in Boston University and for the UNAM Center for Mexican Studies? I understand that UMass will not be opening the next semester, so it means you have, for the the Center for Mexican Studies, you will have to be doing everything remote. Am I right?
Yes, of course, we are based at UMass Boston, although we interact with many other universities in the Northeast, including BU, BC, Harvard, Yale, and many others. But the decision of Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and the UMass system to do everything or most classes remotely is very different from the decision of universities that are tuition dependent, like the EU or Northeastern, that need to open the the face-to-face classes so that they can make ends meet. And this brings many challenges and many opportunities also to imagine the best way in which we can really make the face-to-face experiences much more meaningful, and that we need to learn as faculty and also as students ways in which to use technology in a different manner. I mean, the Harvard School of Graduate Education has done research on distance education methodology, and the attention span is limited at most to 8 minutes. So we need to have surveys, we need to show movies, we need to make a 3 hour long class, an hour and a half at the most. We need to be much more creative, and that will take time. So it will be, we are really at the crossroads of the future of higher education. And I'm afraid that many institutions will have to be completely transformed, to merge, unless they belong to this group of elite universities that have such a large endowment like Harvard, Dartmouth, Yale, Stanford, that will be able to continue on their path. And even them, they are changing a lot.
And I understand that it has become twice more work for a teacher to teach remotely.
It is exhausting. I have to tell you, it is exhausting because you have to overcome the limitations of the distance by becoming much more expressive in your gestures, in your speech. When I finish teaching, I am really exhausted. It's a common thing. I've read about it, the Zoom fatigue. When one needs to become really efficient and watch the energy, because it can be really draining. And I think for the students it's also difficult to focus and also to maintain attention. As Benjamin was saying, we live in the age of short attention span, and this requires us to be glued to a computer too many hours a day instead of doing activities that involve more physical movement. So this is all a part of the new reality where we need to adjust and make use of what we have the best way we can.
And do you know, Saul, if you will be teaching in real person this coming semester? Will you have students?
So the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley is devising a hybrid model which will include some component of in-person teaching, chamber music, and also a larger component of online teaching for all what that involves classroom teaching and lectures. Ensembles will only be playing together if they're really small and strictly controlled by the school. They're in small cohorts which remain together for the semester. The model is evolving as we speak, and we have had periodic faculty meetings where we're being informed of this very complicated logistic. I don't envy and I admire our chair, our dean, and everybody who is working non-stop to create this unprecedented teaching model, which I hope will succeed and which I will make my best effort to contribute to. So it will be a very carefully controlled environment where we will have some face-to-face interaction, but not, of course, not completely.
Thank you. Well, we have an audience, and there's someone asking us that says that has seen music lessons offered via Zoom. What's your opinion about that? This is Erendira Sanchez.
Benjamin, you want to speak about it, or it's for me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, Erendira, we have all, as I said before, we have been getting used to this, and there are things that can really be taught well. There are many aspects of our instrument performance that are concepts that need to be understood before you even lay your hands on an instrument. And this is opportunity to clarify these concepts now and to have them in your knowledge and portfolio, so they become ingrained in your understanding of music. So this is what we're doing now through Zoom, reinforcing the theoretical side of performance, if you will.
I just wanted to add that I admire a lot.
Benjamin, would you
Well, I must say that I admire how faculty like Saúl learn to transition from face-to-face instruction to Zoom in 3 days, and how they we all had to learn how to do it in such a short amount of time. In my case, for example, I taught last term historical performance. I focus a lot on analysis. I focus a lot on listening to classical recordings, to asking my students to experience early music tunings to develop their ear for different kinds of tuning, that very subtle things that sometimes we don't have time to do in class, and through technology we can explore. But although they may have enjoyed some of it, is not the same, of course, as having a face-to-face class. And if we're going to do this again this fall or in 2021, we need to, students expect a higher level of proficiency from their faculty and a better level of quality all around, so that it justifies the tuition and all the investment that they're doing in their higher education.
Because they will be a lot less understanding than what they were at the very beginning. But both of you, you both have done many recordings during your career. And I remember, Benjamin, when I met you, when that fantastic recording on precisely colonial Mexican art in music. What is your favorite? Do you have a preferred way to record and listen to classical music, and why? Both of you.
My preferred way to record is with Marisa Canales, with and her company Urtex, because she's the best producer ever. With her sensitive ear, we have done a lot of recordings with her, but we also have worked with very many fantastic US-based companies. Recording is in the midst of a flux, a transformation. The end product now is not mostly physical. It goes directly online. For better or worse, the era of the CD is almost over. I still don't understand all this. To me, it's a mystery. And I am a bit too old to accept this completely and live with it. I still need some time to touch a disc. But the flip side of the coin is that you have access now. If you release a recording today, it can be heard this same afternoon in New Zealand, which to me, it blows my mind. It's fantastic. So this is a good side, and me and my students have been benefiting from the immense availability of wonderful recordings at the tip of your fingers, which is just something I could never dream of when I was younger. So this is, it's a resource that we have today. Listen to music online, which has a lot of fantastic advantages. The recording itself, the process is the same. You sit down, you have your mic, you have silence, you have to focus, you have to play. It's like a concert, but the audience is the microphone, and it requires a special attitude which we in the Cuarteto have developed through the years to try to imagine that these mics are real people. And this is where a good producer comes in, because the producer is your link between the playing and the audience, eventual audience. The producer has to not only correct you, but also encourage you, make you play better. And this is why it's so crucial to have a good producer.
Marisa thanks you for your comments.
Thank you, Marisa.
Benjamin, do you have something to say about
Well,
the
I agree completely with Saul. I'm also a fan of Marisa, of course. And I think that now many people don't want only to listen, but also to watch. I mean, the phenomenon that started with MTV is something that has migrated also to the classical music world. And that's why we now have apps where you can look at the musicians performing and look at the score, get background information to really have a rich experience of the music that you are uh, exploring or discovering or visiting again. And the problem is not how to get the music, but how to navigate this overabundance of wonderful recordings, and how to really identify what are the points that make a performance unique and unforgettable. And that's where the producer is the closest partner of the artist, and in that way we we can really capture these magical moments that are sometimes very fleeting, and that in a live concert, of course, the experience is completely different. Many of my favorite recordings are actually from live performances, but with a good producer like Marisa, we get that sense of comfort, engagement, and security that makes the musician make the best out of this unnatural situation of being just in an empty hall.
Thank you, Benjamin. And some of our guests previously have talked about the difficulty to create during the pandemic, in spite of apparently having more free time to do so. How has this period been for you in terms of the work that you have been doing? Have you been able to create more, or have you just been surviving?
May I start?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I have surprised myself by going back to practice in a way that I hadn't done since my college days. I am practicing uh, with a lot of focus. I am very motivated, surprisingly, because I have not even one concert in my horizon. Nevertheless, I have been going to repertoire which I never learned, and I'm trying to just play better and better. And I record myself at home. Those are my little concerts once a week. I do a video just for myself, in which I want to play as perfect as possible. So I've created my own little concert world in my studio, and I am practicing with I am enjoying my practice a lot. I've been teaching a lot. I created a online seminar for Latin American violinists together with a college colleague from Costa Rica, and we have weekly sessions with over 100 violinists and violists. So I have kept myself as busy as possible. I am learning German. I am cooking a lot. I'm trying to remain fit. So my days are filled with things that I make myself do, because otherwise I foresee the possibility of this downward spiral, which I'm trying to avoid at all costs.
And have you been able to rehearse with El Cuarteto? And Marisa was telling me, sharing with us that there is that very soon her company will be filming or sharing uh, live film and of the Cuarteto playing Brower.
Yes, that's one of the last things we did before the close down. We recorded with Marisa in Mexico City a video of a fantastic work by Cuban composer Leo Brauer, and the video is it's almost ready, and I just saw a preview and it looks terrific. So this is one of the things we do. We are not active with the quartet because I live in Boston and my three colleagues live in Mexico, and I usually go back and forth, and that of course is not possible. We have done a couple of remote videos playing together, which have been fun, but we are not really playing together.
But you don't rehearse together now?
No, we can't.
Okay. What about you, Benjamin?
Well, I think that I have little rituals. Like every Saturday, I make waffles for Marisa and me, and Sundays, I like to eat a tamal verde. And the problem with during the pandemic is that every day is the same. So what I have tried to do is to get a really rigorous schedule on making Mondays, Tuesdays, and I kept myself busy teaching, making material online, and also learning more on how to use technology to produce films, to tell stories, to make new syllabi for classes that I will be teaching, interacting with colleagues from Berkeley, from Harvard, from Yale, from BU, from BC, and having conversations on different subjects. So that has been very rewarding, and I'm very fortunate to be working for the National University of Mexico, where we have such a constellation of wonderful experts in all the fields of knowledge, and that has allowed me to continue doing online materials with them that we share with our community in New England.
Thank you. Well, you both already did respond to a question by Job Salazar Fonseca, who was precisely saying, what else other than music have you been doing? I don't know if you would want to add anything else.
I have been bird watching, which is one of my hobbies, and especially in the spring. Now it's a bit too hot for that. Going to the beach sometimes and enjoying New England in summer, which is undoubtedly the best season. Really, really beautiful, as you know.
Benjamin, one last word.
I'm preparing now a syllabus to teach an online open class, like a COIL, a collaborative online international learning experience around the musics in Mexico, from pre-Columbian times, the little we know, all the way to the 21st century. Not only concert music, but also music in film, pop music, the African roots of Mexican music. And I'm having a great time doing this in collaboration with many colleagues. So I'm going to give you a call, Saul, to pick your brain about that.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much, Saul and Benjamin, for giving us the time and for sharing with us your experience, part of your career, and how you're coping with the pandemic. This series is also being put now in a new channel that the Mexican Foreign Ministry is creating, called diplomaciacultural.mx, where most of the embassies and consulates are producing materials and putting them in this web. So you are now part of that too. Thank you so much. And I will hope to be seeing you soon in real.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Benjamin. It's been a pleasure talking to you both.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Saul. And stay healthy and safe.